Good afternoon, Robin. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited. Today's conversation is what did we name it? We named it SPF and hypervigilance, yay or nay. So I think this is going to be a really cool conversation, actually. Potentially a conversation that also can ruffle a few feathers. And I'm certainly, that wasn't my goal in this, or maybe I should rephrase that. Not ruffle a few feathers, but I think people have very hard stances
Yeah.
in SPF and hypervigilance. So today, I'm not looking to be a space for debate or conflict or to ruffle those feathers. So that's why I want to go back and change that phrase. But what I want to do today in this conversation and open it to the community is so that we can perhaps see a different perspective on it. So, before we jump into the topic today, let me introduce myself. I'm Jamie, the founder of the HSA, the facilitator that's loving having these conversations and bringing other spa pros into the treatment room, into the conversation. And as usual, if you're joining this live and you want to interject, add a question, please do so. Unmute yourself, ask a question, or enter it down in the chats. We'll take a peek at it and incorporate it, or just observe and listen. And if you are catching this on a replay, then please let us know, and we'll try to reply there as well. But um, outside of myself, today's guest speaker and a huge supporter of the HSA is Robin. And Robin is a fellow esthetician here in New Hampshire, which it's really cool that I've been kind of finding a lot of New England based or New Hampshire specifically based colleagues. And Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know what I've left out. But not only are you a New Hampshire licensed esthetician, but you're a licensed New Hampshire aesthetics instructor
Yes.
and a registered nurse.
Yes, you're right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for making sure I got all of that. But I think that the two worlds that you come from, the medical and then the aesthetics with the holistic lens, is going to be also a beautiful merge for today's conversation as well. Um, let's see. I guess let me set the stage by letting everybody know where we're coming from, this holistic lens that we are looking through in today's conversation around SPF and hypervigilance, whether it's a yay for you or a nay. I think you'll kind of figure out what our point of view is towards the end, but I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to start with giving a parallel. And I, how do I want to start this? We'll just start. I'll just say it. My parallel this is referring back to plants and how plants need, not only need, but they thrive with sunlight. For photosynthesis to happen, they need a few things. They need carbon dioxide, they need water, and then sunlight is also key. They can go a few days without water. They might, I don't know the science behind it fully, but they could probably go a little bit without carbon dioxide, but they cannot go without the light in order to create the photosynthesis. And the parallel I'm trying to make here between plants and us is plants don't fear the sun, they depend on it. And without that sunlight, plants won't grow, repair, or thrive. The sunlight to the plant is an energy source. The leaves is going to absorb, that light gets converted into fuel, and the fuel is what allows that growth and repair. So the plants basically take that sunlight and they turn it into life. Okay. So then to bring it back to us, even though we are not plants, we are energy driven. So our bodies respond to sunlight too, right? Not obviously for the photosynthesis, but for cellular energy and signaling. Specifically, if you want to narrow it down, I'll keep it short and sweet for this parallel, but specifically to the mitochondria and our ATP. Mitochondria obviously is the energy factories in our cells, and the ATP is the energy our body actually uses. So no ATP, no function. Low ATP, fatigue, pore repair, dysfunction. So, what the sunlight is doing for us, just like it's doing for the plants, is it hits our skin and our eyes. We don't have the petals and the stems, and then through the skin and the eyes, it signals to the body and supports that mitochondrial function. It produces our ATP or our energy. So sunlight is one of the input that tells our cells how much energy, how to make, excuse me, the energy. So what I'm looking to reframe today or give a different perspective on is to reframe maybe a fear that a lot of people have or that we've been, I won't go as far as to say brainwash, but what we've really been hammered home in education and school for aesthetics, which is sun equals damage. And I'd like us to look through the lens of sun can equal information and energy. But we will also recognize and honor the obvious, which is too much sun can equal damage, which can be burning, aging, risk factors. But again, to our point here, too little sun is where dysfunction can come through, low energy and poor signaling. So it's not about fear or avoidance today. It's about relationship and dose, if you will, of the sun, or another term for that, what I'll bring up is moderation, really. So the question isn't, should we avoid the sun today? It's how do we work with it? And how does SPF fit into that conversation? So that was a very long-winded parallel, but there it is for you. And Robin, I want you to take a moment and maybe introduce yourself a little bit more, and then let me know your thoughts and your understanding and your take on SPF and hypervigilance.
Sure. Well, first, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I am honored to be a part of the HSA. I love what you're doing, Jamie, and I
You.
feel that this topic is near and dear to my heart. I also recognize that as a professional, it is a little bit of a conflict for me, right? Because it's one thing for me as an individual to go out and get my daily dose of sunlight. It's another thing to tell my clients to do that. Can
So
I tell
true.
my clients to do that? Right? It's an important question, and I feel like I am, the steward of my clients' health in many ways, and I never want to be recommending things that are my opinion or just anecdotal. I, as a nurse, look to evidence base. So, that's what I did when I was researching for this talk today. I thought, okay, we're 40 years in to the SPF campaign. Has
I
it
did not
worked?
know that. We're 40 years in.
Yeah.
No kidding. That's interesting to me. And how it originates and where we've come in it. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but has anything changed too much since we've introduced it 40 years ago in some of your research? Or is that not where
Well,
you've dabbled?
it's interesting because there's a ton of data out there now.
Mm.
And even just this morning, I've been kind of preparing for this for a month now. And even this morning, I found a new video out of Scotland. There's a dermatologist, Richard Weller, and he is a big sunlight proponent. And I was watching a video even just now, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is just validating everything that I personally feel. And there is a little bit of a personal story here. I grew up on the beach from a very young age. I spent all my summers, out running around, and I grew up in the 70s and early 80s, and it wasn't the same back then. We weren't as fearful of the sun. We didn't also know what we know now. So as I got older and saw myself, I would be the one in the friend group going to the beach, getting the tan, laying out at college, with snowbanks beside me, but the sun was out, so guns were out.
For
I
sure.
was soaking it all up. And it occurred to me at one point, I want to say last year, that I knew that sun was vital to my health.
Mhm.
And I also worked in a med spa. And we recommended to our clients that they not get sun, that they put on the hat, the clothes, the sunglasses, the SPF, and really avoid the sun, take a vitamin D supplement. And I thought, well, is it just about vitamin D? Because I feel something of health when I'm in the sun. So that's what led me down this road of research.
I love that. And I think that's where a lot of like really great conversations stem from, like something, a personal story around it. And I too feel different when I get proper levels of vitamin D, the sun, its energy. And I know that we're both from New Hampshire, so we're in New England, and this conversation might look a little different, obviously, for somebody that lives right on the equator. So we're all going to take that into consideration and when we're having this conversation. But in New England, we have, especially New Hampshire, we have very long gray winters with such long spans of a lack of sun.
Mm.
And seasonal affect disorder is a major hot topic, I think, for this
Yeah.
area. And you don't only need to be in New Hampshire for that, but it's when you have that lack of the sunlight. I do suffer from that. That seasonally I have to prepare myself and I do up my vitamin D, but there is nothing like the natural source. When this time of year, my blinds are open right now in my treatment room and you can see the sun coming in, just to bask in it. But again, back to that moderation and back to a few
Right.
important considerations as well, like where am I on the Fitzpatrick scale? And is my microbiome healthy? And a few other things. But to what you were saying, I feel it deeply when I don't have
It's
that sunlight.
intuitive. I remember a year or so ago, I was talking to one of my clients about the sun, and she is from Morocco originally. And I said, well, I do think that a moderate amount of sunlight is actually healthy for you. And her eyes flew open and she
Mhm.
looked at me, and we had this moment of connection where we just knew. We knew that we had each other's backs, and we could educate. I
Because
could
it's
educate
almost
her.
taboo right now. You have to almost feel out
Yeah.
your audience. Are you yay
Yes.
or are you nay? Are you pro or are
Yeah.
you against?
And it is
And
our responsibility to, share the whole story with our clients, I feel, where, the sun does cause photo aging.
right.
It does. So you have to be careful. And what we do know about sun exposure is it's the burning that is the highest risk factor for aging and certain types of skin cancers.
Correct.
So we know we can't get a burn, and there's many ways to avoid sunburn, right? It's sunlight in moderation, it's sunlight at the right time of day, and it's also wearing SPF, right? I can go outside and wear my SPF on my face, but maybe I don't put it on my arms and legs for 10 minutes. And I know for me, with my fits, I can do 10 minutes a day of natural full spectrum sunlight. So let's talk about full spectrum sunlight. I have a background in functional medicine as well, and I follow a lot of functional medicine providers within my own, Instagram and whatnot. And I'm always reading the data. And one thing we do know is our low natural sunlight diet is causing a huge upset in our circadian rhythms.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but most of my clients report poor sleep. And it is
Yes.
tracked back to this high blue light diet we're on and this low full spectrum sunlight diet we're on. Um, so I could certainly make the argument that getting morning sunlight is incredibly important to kind of wake up that natural morning circadian dose of serotonin. And then when it gets dark out, our natural, lights out time, try to remove the blue lights so that we can get our melatonin to kick in. That melatonin
Yeah.
is what puts us to sleep, and that's also very important.
If you think
Um,
of us pre-technology, the sun, I highlighted just the energy piece, but you're right. It's therefore we touched upon mood, but it's better sleep at night. And if you think of our sun as our clock without the actual, watch, phone, clock on the wall, something digital, it is when that light first hits the body, the skin, and awakens to again awaken and start that circadian rhythm. And then as it slowly sets, that's also signal to our brains as well that it's time.
right.
So to look at it as a pertinent piece of information, granted, we have technology now and we have lights, and unfortunately, blue lights, as you had mentioned, to keep it, we're on our tablets, we're on our laptops, we're watching television, whatever it may be. And that's disrupting a lot of
Yes.
what this natural sunlight can do for our bodies.
What it comes down to for me is faith in the body's wisdom, right? So if I go outside and I feel the sun on my skin, I have the sun in my eyes, and I feel joy, and I can feel that warming of the skin, as my skin absorbs the rays. I can trace that back to a health benefit and going down sort of like this rabbit hole I've been going down for the last month. It was really cool to see that intuition that I have can be validated in the data. And of course, we know that vitamin D is so integral to our health. First of all, our mental health. It is implicated in, SAD, as you mentioned before, depression, even suicidal ideation, bone loss. So we know we need our vitamin D, but what's interesting is the study that Richard Weller conducted showed that even if you supplement the D but take away the sun, it does not improve longevity. And one of the things that was discovered is that within our skin, we have a great amount of nitric oxide. And to activate that nitric oxide, we need sunlight. And nitric oxide is naturally a reducer of blood pressure. So for cardiovascular risk and early
Interesting.
death from
Yeah.
cardiovascular problems, sun can be a huge factor in reducing that risk. One of the studies also showed that the more sunlight you get, the less you are at risk of death. So they
Hmm.
followed a cohort of, I think, 40,000 people over 15 years, and they were able to save 39 people from death of melanoma, but at the expense of nearly 3,000 other deaths from other complications. So that was really compelling to me. And I do have a blog post on my website that details out all of these references if people want to dig a little deeper.
We'll link that in a replay here too, and we'll send it directly to anybody watching live, just so everybody has it right at their fingertips.
Great. I want to talk for a moment about melanocyte stimulating hormone.
Mhm.
I'll call it MSH for abbreviation, but MSH is really fascinating to me, and it's something that's triggered not only from visual sunlight, but from getting it on your skin. And this is the hormone that protects us from burning. It's what kind of tells the melanocytes to do their job and produce a tan. What's interesting is that MSH doesn't only just produce a tan, but it has a very high immunomodulatory action. And it also triggers some enzymatic activity that helps with like gut microbiome. If you've ever heard someone say, and I heard it in my classroom just the other day, oh, my mom has psoriasis, but then she goes out in the sun and the sun cures her psoriasis. And well, wasn't it nice for me to say, oh, there's a study on that?
I think now that we're able to bring again these two worlds together, and have the science that backs it,
Yeah,
because I think you said something earlier, faith in our body's wisdom. Like there's a deep knowing, but that will only take some people so far. Or if you're having a
right,
conversation with somebody who's really strong in that belief, which we're not trying to change your opinion, right? If you want and need and have to have SPF and avoid the sun, we're not trying to discredit whatever your story is, your personal
yeah,
beliefs that brought you up to that. But to have these conversations to maybe plant a seed of knowledge and a different perspective, because what I think the science that you just touched upon does is it reinforces this faith in the body's wisdom, the fact
yeah,
that we are a whole being, and not one thing is not just affecting one thing in the body, on the body, for the body. There's a plethora, there's so many other things that are happening, so many other factors to understand and consider as to why this
right,
sunlight is wonderful for us beyond the avoidance for aging.
right. And that is of concern, right? In our business, our clients are concerned about premature aging. And
Mhm.
I do feel that, through appropriate barrier support, proper protection, you can have it all. I am a you can have
Mhm.
it all kind of person. Um, I think that SPF does have its place.
I
For
agree.
me, from a position of ethics, I can't separate the fact that 40 years ago, there was this campaign for SPF, and this billion-dollar industry responded to this new need, right?
Mhm.
I work with a lot of different brands, and their sunscreens are, part of their revenue stream. It's important. It's important for us as well. But I do think that there is a healthy balance between being afraid of the sun and recognizing what we need to do to prevent premature aging, but also getting all of the immune system benefits, the GI benefits. If the sun helps our gut microbiome, you can't, flip through any sort of holistic wellness book now without hearing about the, gut microbiome. This is integral to our skin's health as well.
Absolutely.
Um, I just happened to see when I was in sort of the medical world that everything was, just stay out of the sun, put on sunscreen. If you get this procedure, don't go in the sun. You have to come in
Mhm.
a hat and, all of this. And, there are times when we have to do that. Um, but there's also a much deeper conversation, and that is listening to our bodies
Yeah.
and reading the data. I mean, 40 years in, how much skin cancer has been prevented from the
Right.
use of sunscreen? It's really mixed. You can't say A plus B equals C. It's really
100% of the
mixed.
time. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I don't think you were going here, but another layer to that is also where you're getting your SPF from, and what is specifically where I'm leading towards is what are the ingredients? What are the other ingredients, the filler ingredients? Are there endocrine disruptors in
Yeah.
the SPF if you are using a chemical SPF? Because obviously there's a mineral base or a physical, and then there's the chemical, and they can have fillers as well. So that's not a clean transition, but I think what I'm
Yes.
trying to also say is there is potential of, I'm going to say this very gently, but there's potential of harm also by applying the wrong type of SPF,
Yes.
or not the wrong type, because there are clean Wonderful chemical SPFs out there as well. But if you're using something that is not aware or takes pride in the best ingredients and is using low cost, cheap, has fillers, and again, things with endocrine disruptors, known carcinogens, because unfortunately, that is what's out there. It's in our shampoos, it's in our makeups, it's in our skincare lines, it's in our you name it. So it is also in certain types of SPF as well. So we also need to be careful of that particular aspect if we're
Absolutely. And
choosing.
I think in particular in the United States, our guidelines aren't as strict as in the EU, for example.
Right.
And I think across the board, it's generally accepted that a physical sunscreen is preferred. And while working with any sort of aerosol sunscreen,
Mhm.
100% do not breathe it in. We know that those particles are very harmful to lungs. So that is a big no-no as well. So there are healthier options to your point.
And I think that maybe was the point that I wasn't fully conveying. I have this thought, but I'm trying to convey it is, if you're trying to prevent damage issues, eventually potentially sun cancer, but you're not putting on something good for you, healthy for you, then you've traded one for the other. But I think,
Absolutely. I am just looking at my notes here, I mentioned before that when I was doing research for this, I kind of went down the rabbit hole. And one of the things, I had this light bulb moment one morning and I looked at the map of the blue zones. And I was really interested to see that our blue zones are all so much closer to the equator. And there is data that suggests that living in areas where there is routinely more sunlight adds to longevity. And, we know all the reasons why. The sun is very life-giving. Of course, there's more available fresh food in those areas. The immune system plays a giant role in longevity. So I would suggest that that has to do with that piece too.
tell us what the blue zone means.
So the blue zones are areas of the world that have been identified for having the most centurions. So the most people that live past 100.
Okay,
And
thank you.
there's a theme. They're on the equator, mostly near the equator. They have active lifestyles. They have a rich social life. There's a lot of movement, fresh food, and sunlight.
Well, yeah, and my mind goes to, well, what is that common denominator? If you're moving more, if you're eating better, there's an abundance of energy,
Yeah,
sunlight, right? So it's helping fuel that. If I'm relating it back to something I described at the beginning, the seasonal affect disorder, just to, use an example, we don't have the energy to get up and get out and walk, even though we know it would benefit us, right?
right.
So that just draws an aha moment for me, even listening to that in these blue zone areas, and perhaps why, just
Right,
helping bridge that
exactly.
gap of understanding.
Right.
I let's see here. So let's talk about when SPF is supportive then. Because again, we're not anti, right? Unless you had something
Right.
specific you wanted to continue there. I don't mean to change directions.
No, I think that
But
it's worth exploring. As we have said, we do recognize that the sun is responsible for photoaging, right? We do
mhm,
have to be responsible with our exposure. I would say that the worst possible sunlight you can get is through glass. So if you think about driving, if you're going on a long car ride on a sunny day, that is the time to put on your SPF. We know that glass magnifies the sun's rays. And, there's photos all over the web of the truck driver
I was
with
just
the,
going to reference. Yeah,
magnified sun damage on one side of the face and not on the other. Now, what we don't maybe think about is the fact that the glass has that sort of effect on the sun's rays.
that
I
ability to
do believe
magnify.
that wearing sunscreen on your face as the most highly exposed area of the body every day is wise. I have a little SPF on right now. I'm inside today, but it's a sunny day. I'm going to go outside after. Um, but I'm not going to choose to put it all over my body before I leave the
Right.
house. I think
Yeah,
that, the good sort of guideline to follow is get a sunscreen that works well for you at a number that is appropriate for your fits. Apply the recommended amount. I think that most people under apply their SPF. Most of us also put it on and then go swimming and towel it off. So be aware that you have to reapply. These are all good rules to follow. But I would also suggest that allowing some parts of your body to absorb the full spectrum sunlight could be beneficial.
exactly. In my treatment room, again, based here out of New Hampshire, the way that I talk about it is if you are inside working, you're not going to be outside too much. You want, as you just said, a little bit of your skin without SPF to absorb.
Yeah.
And then on the days that you know you're going to be out on the boat, we live in the lakes region where I'm at. If you're going to be skiing for the day, if you are going to be hiking, you're in the sun more than you would on a regular day. That's when I encourage it. I also encourage a hat, long sleeves, lightweight, cottons, linens, seek shade, but still be out. Again, recognizing or having allowing that intuitive piece of knowing, okay, how long have I been in the sun? How does my skin feel? How is my body reacting as well is also very important. But for those days that you know you're going to be in direct sun, enjoying the sun, I think also a great topic of conversation for our guests and each other today is the numbers. Because when I first learned that the difference between SPF 30 and SPF 50 was only like, what, 7% difference? At that time, that was very surprising to me. You think of the higher number as something that's going to protect you maybe longer. And I think it's 93% of UVB rays off the top of my head, correct me if I'm wrong, is what is um, SPF 30 is protecting versus SPF 50 is protecting you from 97%. Now that's still, those are high numbers. Those are great numbers. Um, but so now knowing when to use the 30 versus the 50 to allow maybe a little bit of that filtration through, and how to apply, when to reapply, all of those
Right.
things are also equally important.
I
And
think what is suggestive in the research with regard to skin cancer is that SPF can give some individuals a false sense of security so
right.
that they wind up staying out too long and they wind up with those burns. And we do know, you know, without question, that is burning, especially in childhood, really is one of the risk factors for skin cancer and specifically melanoma as well. The other big risk factor for melanoma, of course, I can't overlook is pre-existing nevus. You
Right.
want to keep an eye on those moles, and if they change in any way, get them looked at.
I think to be aware of your own body, the Fitzpatrick scale obviously is the first thing to help put yourself into a category to maybe understand where you might fall. But even within the Fitzpatrick, you might be a little more resilient to the sun if you're, in a certain number. But knowing that can typically, and you're not going to go out and test this on yourself, but theoretically, like if you were out in the sun for 10 minutes, do you burn then? Or is it after 15 minutes? Or is it after 20 minutes? Or what is it? And to know that about yourself is also going to help you gauge and know what your personal amount of time is. Because the obvious or the standard recommendation is every 2 hours, just as a blanket statement. But
Right.
where are you? What are you doing as an activity for that day? And what does your skin history tell you, or what does your skin reaction, historic reaction tell you about when you've been exposed to the sun? And to listen to your body and not just go off of every 2 hours, because sometimes that's
Hmm.
not enough. If I am from, I use this example a lot, but if I'm from New Hampshire and I travel down to the equator, I might be fine for a good 20, 30 minutes in New Hampshire sun in the type of Fitzpatrick that I am, but I'm going to react differently. First of all, the intensity is different, and but it's not my norm either. It's not what my body's used to either.
Absolutely. And people who fall into the far right category of sun worshiping talk about something called a skin callus. So you have to get
Right.
your body used to the sun. And that is a very, titrated individual thing. And I'm not suggesting people go out and build up a sun callus or a tan. But it is being talked about in longevity medicine as something people do, even people who are very fair.
Well,
Interesting.
it is interesting, and our bodies truly are amazing. I mean, they're divine. They are incredible on a level that I think we only know a tip of the iceberg for.
Yeah.
So, yes, our body knows how to protect ourselves. And as long as we're not going out there and flash burning ourselves each time in order to build that callus, your body will build up a little bit of a tolerance.
Right.
And a barrier that is made then to protect you. But you made a point to say when you're younger, that's really when it's most important because our skin cells hold memories,
Yes.
traumas, all of it. And that doesn't um, negate how our skin is going to act and react with the sun long term either. So we think of a trauma as maybe something a little more severe, like a cut, or we're not going to fully go here, but emotional trauma can be stored in the
Yeah.
body too, right? But the sun's reaction on the skin can create a small trauma, and our cells remember that.
Yes.
And it's affecting the health of the cell, the health of the skin down to a cellular level, and how it's going to show up for you in the long term as well. So it's important to care for and manage at a younger age. So that preventative is so important. And it's only going to
Absolutely.
help us as we age into or mature into the skin at 45 and beyond, and how long I can be in the sun based
Right.
directly off of how I've treated it.
And as professionals, we know our ingredients, right? We know that using antioxidant ingredients are incredibly nourishing to the skin and help to, alleviate DNA damage caused by environmental factors, excess sunlight being one of them. We have a toolkit.
We do, all at our fingertips. And I think it's also wise that as we are in our treatments too, to be educators for our clients. We're not here just to give you, I mean, yeah, I want you to fall asleep and relax fully, but I want you to also leave with knowledge as well after you've left my treatment room. And it's not all at once, and it's little tidbits at a time, but ensuring that our guests know. And part of that education is products as well, not just the sunscreen. Of course, that is a lucrative piece, as you mentioned earlier, to a lot of businesses. But what else as well? What are some antioxidants that could be put into their regimen? Um, Especially as we get to know our clients and what kind of lifestyles that they like to live. If we want to help them um, I'm not against aging, but certainly we all have this level of wanting to be as youthful as long as we can. So,
Yeah.
what is the toolbox that we have at our fingertips that we can share? And when we come at our retail sales in that from that angle, instead of it being a sale, it's a true piece of education. It's also going
Yes.
to bridge the gap there for us as well and continue to build that trust between ourselves and our clients.
And I think that was the perfect segue to what I hope to convey, which is we really have to know our clients, right? We have to develop that relationship and understand where they're coming from. If I have a client who hates their hyperpigmentation and has a history of melasma and it really bothers them, I'm probably not going to
Right.
talk to them about safe sun exposure on their face, right? I'm going to
Right.
sell them
That is a
the
great point.
SPF and the products for
Yeah.
pigment and things like that. But if I have, you know, a mom who's out on the soccer field, she loves the sun, I'm going to give her the tools to live her best life and protect her skin, age well, age younger. I may also talk to my clients about spending a lot of time outdoors. You know, we have a short season. We've talked about being up here in New Hampshire. We have a short outdoor season compared to other parts of the world. And it's so vital that we get out there, we get our sunlight, we get our vitamin D, we play in the woods because the
Yeah.
trees also absorb sunlight and then they give off near infrared light, which is incredibly healing to us as humans. People are now buying devices to use inside that do the same
When you
thing.
have it right at your fingertips, or at least us in New Hampshire, maybe not in the city as much, but there are places that you can retreat to in these more city aspects. But and again, I'm always in awe, and I love these little nuggets of information when you can bridge the gap between woo woo and real science,
Yeah.
because people talk about forest bathing. And I think it generally stops there. Like forest bathing, oh, it's wonderful. And it's not talked about any further. But the fact that the trees are absorbing the sunlight and then emitting this near infrared. That's the true essence of the forest bathing. Why you're out there. You're in
Right.
nature, you're getting oxygen, you're moving. Again, it all goes back to this whole body aspect for healthy, optimal homeostasis.
Absolutely. And, you know, maybe in closing, we can think about how it's just been 40 years of SPF and it's been thousands of years of worshiping the sun. If people do yoga, what is the core yoga sequence that you learn is the sun salutation.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. I think that part of this conversation helps, again, plant seeds. I like that analogy. If you were really strongly rooted in SPF or nothing, absolutely no sun or a hard stop, anywhere in between there, maybe today's conversation will allow you, again, plant those seeds for a little bit of growth to consider a different perspective. Because again, to summarize the positive effects of healthy exposure to sun, and that's the key word right there, healthy. And that's going to be unique to every single individual. It's not a blanket, but that vitamin D production, the circadian rhythm support, mood, serotonin, better sleep rhythm, mitochondrial support, ATP or cell energy, circulation, and the nitric oxide that you had mentioned, and then some skin conditions improving with controlled exposure. So, when used wisely, the sunlight can be nourishing. So, this overall
And
chat
reduce cardiovascular disease.
and reduce cardiovascular disease. That one I was not as aware of in my little bit of research that I done, and I'm super excited to go home and chat with my husband about that one personally. Um, he is, well, we'll leave that, but he's looking to do some natural things to make the changes in order to not be reliant on just medicine. There is a time
Yeah.
and a place for it, but what are some things that he can do to support it? So, yeah, this world has been around a lot longer than the last 40 years when the SPF information first came out. So, shifting the perspective from a fear-based, it's gonna age you, It's going to give you cancer. It's going to be all these negative things. But if we can shift and lean into this perspective of healthy exposure, then the sun is such um, a necessity. I mean, and we know that. I mean, the earth would not be alive without the sun. We would not be the plants, all of it. So um, just a different perspective.
Yep.
You have anything else in closing that you would like to bring up,
I don't think so.
just in
Just that if
case?
anyone has additional questions or contributions, my contact information is available through the HSA, and I also will publish my paper on this through the HSA, so that's available as well.
And that's what I was just going to end with is letting people know that it's linked. And Kimberly, thank you for joining. You had to have gotten to us at the tail end, but that's okay. You're going to get it in replay. We'll send it to you directly. But give us your Instagram handle, Robin, and your business website if you're comfortable with that, where people can come
Yes,
like check you out and contact you directly. But it will also be linked for everybody as well.
beautiful. I'm at Holistic Beauty RN, both website and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robin. This was an amazing conversation. I loved it on so many levels. I wrote a few things down myself, even, and I'm a forever student just as much as I'm an educator and a facilitator of these conversations. So Rachel and Kimberly, I hope you got a little bit, maybe more, Rachel. But again, you'll see this all on replay, and we are available for any future questions or comments that you might have. But otherwise, enjoy your healthy sun exposure, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Bye.
Bye.